Hello boys and girls, my name is Sergei Sputnikov and you're watching Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. Today's video will be about Azov. I received a lot of requests to make such a video, probably because people know that I grew up in Ukraine and I'm an Ukrainian by nationality, although I'm a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. To be honest, I was very surprised why so many people want to know information about Azov Sea. It's just a small shallow sea connected to Black Sea, and it's on the border between Ukraine and Russia. But then I was corrected, no, we don't care about Azov Sea. We want to know your opinion about far-right Nazi Ukrainian Azov Battalion. And if I ask people, why do you think Azov Battalion is Nazi, they will of course reply, duh, look at their emblem. Azov Battalion emblem is a mirror reflection of German SS division Das Reich. Well, if we want to play the emblem game, we could ask question, why did Russian Z troops in Ukraine use the emblem of SS Polizei Panzer Grenadier Division? Does that make them Nazi? Especially considering the fact there is no Z letter in the Russian alphabet. Z as well as V letters that are being actively used for propaganda of the Russian war in Ukraine don't exist in the Russian alphabet. They're totally foreign letters, and letter Z reminds SS Polizei Panzer Grenadier Division. Well, let's take a look at this photo. So it's obviously we have a swastika symbol and two officials having discussion. Would you assume that those two guys are Nazis since they're in the room with this item that has a Nazi swastika on it? Looky, who got cookie? That's the Foreign Minister of Russia, Lavrov, with his Mongolian counterpart having a conversation in the room that has a swastika. So are those two guys Nazis? Look at this picture. Same room, same swastika teapot, and we have Comrade Putin paying a visit to Mongolian leader. Are those Nazis? How about this breaking news from July 1st, 2020? Finland's Air Force quietly drops swastika symbol. Did anyone consider Finland a Nazi state? Meanwhile, Finland had a Nazi symbol for its Air Force for over 100 years. Since 1914 to 2020, they use swastika as their symbol. And before we return to the topic of Azov Battalion, let's take a look at this photo. What do you see here? On the right, it's Comrade Pushilin. He is the leader of Donetsk People's Republic, self-proclaimed independent republic that's supported by Russia, republic that fighting supposedly Ukrainian Nazis, given award to a guy who, what he has on his arm. This Russian anti-Nazi fighter has two Nazi symbols. One of them is famous Totenkopf, dead head, famous SS symbol. So this anti-Nazi fighter happily applied Nazi patches on his uniform. Okay, so let's go back to Azov Battalion emblem. Definitely wasn't the best idea to have such an emblem because it created a lot of these Nazi references. But let's look at the history. Quick Google research in Russian or Ukrainian could tell you that this symbol is actually borrowed. Originally, it was a symbol of a Социал-националистичной партии Украины, so it's Social National Party of Ukraine, and it's apparently a combination of two letters, letter I, that stands for idea, and letter N, that stands for nation, nacija. And some people thinking it actually was Ideя Nazi or Nacionalna Ideya, so national idea. And there's also conversation that it used to be in old Ukrainian alphabet, we used the letter N written like in Latin style. And around the Peter the Great time, they made Ukrainian alphabet change and take the Russian letter N, which looks like English H. Personally, I believe that Azov people picked this symbol not because it looks like a Nazi symbol, but because it looks like a Ukrainian trident, Trizub, which is a symbol of Ukrainian state. And earlier in the 1930s, 1940s, it was a symbol of Ukrainian fight for independence. There's another interesting detail I would like to point out. Think about the name Azov. How scary, how Nazi this name is, Azov. It's Azov Sea. This movement started in a town on the shores of Azov Sea, so they picked that name. There's nothing dangerous or scary, right? Now compare that to the night wolves, Nochneye Volki of Russia. Those guys look way more Nazi, including their label, their leather jackets, and their favorite motorbike group of Comrade Putin. And of course, when we're talking about nationalism and Nazism, we are like walking on really thin ice, because at some point, nationalism becoming a Nazism. So for example, if the call will be not Ukraine above all, but Ukraine only for Ukrainians, this is when nationalism becomes Nazism, right? Then you can call someone Nazi if he says, well, Ukraine only for Ukrainians. Everyone else should leave or be killed. It's like a long time ago I learned at the farm that every prune is a plum, but not every plum is a prune. Similarly, every Nazi is a nationalist, but not every nationalist is a Nazi. So Azov Battalion definitely is a national battalion. Maybe some of those guys went so far right that you can call them Nazi, but I wouldn't base my opinion just on their label. And you also need to remember that Russian propaganda loves to call anyone who really put up resistance to Russian expansion, aggression, occupation as Nazis. And this is a classic example of that. And Azov Battalion did just that. Back in 2014, when the regular Ukrainian troops were a total mess, they managed to stop and push back the Russian troops, and they took back Melitopol and restored control of Ukraine over the southern areas and along the shore of Azov Sea. Well, that's all I have to say about this controversial topic. As always, there's a lot of lies on both sides. So if you have any input, please put in your comments, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Slava Ukraini. Героям слава. Glory to Ukraine. Ukraine will prevail.
Доброго вечора, ми з України.
Sergei wrote a book based on diaries he made when he was first in the United States. And as I understand, this is just volume 1, right? That's correct. He's going to have multiple volumes coming out. Well, I said, well, since Sergei is kind enough to come up and speak with us, I bought the book. I said, I might as well read this. I read this in one sitting. 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I just couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because your writing is very compelling, for one. And his story is very interesting for two. It's very interesting. You know, we've lived here our whole lives. We don't have that perspective. It's just so interesting to hear someone else's perspective about what we take for granted. So I hope you really tune in and listen to what he has to say. It's a very interesting, very informed perspective. Sergei is not a historian. He's an electrical engineer by trade, but I find that he has a depth of understanding on history, economics, culture. So just a very observant fellow and a great storyteller. So like